Now, second half of the chapter or this lecture is going to be on the nervous system. Now we're actually going to start talking about the parts of the brain, parts of the spinal cord, and the cells.
I hope.
Now, the nervous system is broken down into two main branches, CNS and TNS, central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Now, if we right now just focus on the CNS, central nervous system is broken down into two main do it this way because we need a lot of room for the penis. Okay? It's broken down into the brain and spinal cord. So basically, CNS consists of the brain and the spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system is everything else, rest of your body. Everything besides the spinal cord and the brain is considered the peripheral nervous system. Okay? So your spinal nerves, your median nerve, all of your nerves, everything running through the rest of your body is the peripheral nervous system. Only your spinal cord and the brain is the central nervous system. Okay? Now, your brain basically receives signals directly from your special senses. Okay? What are the special senses? Sight, so from your eyes. Hearing, so from your ears. Cannot touch. Smell, so from your nose. Taste, from your mouth. Balance, okay? So balance, also your ear tends to deal with your balance. When we talk about sensory, you will know that. So your special senses, okay, they directly put information into your brain. It directly gets developed into your brain. So what right now I'm seeing stuff directly gets inputted into my brain. Okay? So your special senses directly input stuff into your brain. Everything else, let's say I'm having a heart attack. Okay, I feel that pain. How does that information go into my brain? Okay, because the heart is part of the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so anywhere else there's movement or there is sensory information, anything, that's a peripheral nervous system. Okay, everything that is peripheral. So now, how does the peripheral nervous system communicate with your central nervous system? That is via the spinal cord. Spinal cord acts like a bridge between the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Okay? So my special senses directly feed stuff to the brain, where everything else that occurs in your body and goes through to your brain via the spinal cord. Okay? So spinal cord is a bridge between the two. Yes?
So it's the bridge between the two, but it's considered the central nervous system?
Yes.
Okay.
Its function is a bridge, but what is it part of? It's part of the central nervous system. Okay? So this is a bridge. How does it act like a bridge? From the peripheral nervous system, stuff goes to the spinal cord. Okay, and then from the spinal cord, it goes to the brain. And now, as I was saying, that cooking thing, I picked up the hot pot, right? That information was going from my body to my brain, right? So your spinal cord came in the way. The body gave the information to spinal cord takes it up to my brain. Now my brain decided, okay, I need to let go or I'm going to hurt myself. Okay? Then basically that action, my brain controlled it, it kind of gave that information to the spinal cord, and from there it went to the peripheral nervous system, my muscles, right? My muscles had to either, some of them had to contract, some of them had to relax to let go of the pot. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay, when something is going from the body to the brain, is it called afferent or efferent? When it's going upward, afferent. When it's going from the brain coming back to the body, it's called efferent. Okay? So peripheral nervous system, that stuff goes afferent, right? It goes through the brain. Now the brain has to send that information down. That is efferent. Okay? One goes up, then comes back down.
How do you spell those two terms?
Afferent, A-F-F-E-R-E-N-T, goes from the peripheral nervous system to the central nervous system. That's afferent. Efferent, E-F-F-E-R-E-N-T, efferent goes from the central nervous system to your peripheral nervous system. Okay? So afferent goes upward, efferent comes back down. A comes before E. You will have to send something up for it to come back down. Okay? Does that make sense? Now let's talk about the peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system is split up into two main branches: sensory and motor. Sensory and motor. Sensory is split up into two main branches, which is somatic and visceral. Okay? Visceral means your internal organs. So anytime, basically, let's say I have a heart attack or my pancreas starts to hurt, that is my visceral branch of my visceral branch of my sensory that picks it up, right? But what if it's your skeletal muscles? Okay, that is somatic. Does that make sense? So if I fall down, or let's say I went to the gym and I did a lot of sit-ups, and then my abdominal muscle starts hurting, that's my somatic branch of my sensory that picks it up. Does that make sense? But now if I'm having a heart attack, that's my visceral branch. Does that make sense? So these are branches. So somatic would be like your skeletal muscles, and visceral would be your internal organs. Okay? Then motor is split up into two branches: autonomic and basically somatic. Somatic tends to skeletal muscle. Autonomic tends to do basically your smooth muscle and your cardiac muscle. Because every internal organ is made up of smooth or cardiac muscle, right? Skeletal muscle you only found basically in the periphery, like your diaphragm, your respiratory muscles. But what is your heart made up of? Cardiac. What is your uterus made up of? Okay? Because motor is causing the movement, right? So motor has to deal with basically muscles and glands, plus glands. Now, your autonomic nervous system is split up into two smaller branches. Okay? Sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So your autonomic nervous system is further divided into two smaller branches, which are sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay? Now, your sympathetic nervous system tends to deal with basically fight or flight response. Fight or flight response. Your parasympathetic nervous system tends to deal with rest and digest. Okay, does that make sense? What does that mean? If you keep that in mind, you will know basically your autonomic nervous system has to deal with all of your organs. Okay, your smooth muscle, your cardiac muscle, and everything. So, let's say, let's say you're a bully in high school, okay, and you get faced. I mean, you're not bully. Sorry, you're a nerd who gets faced with a bully. You come across. Now, you're either going to run for your life, or you're finally going to get the courage to stand up for yourself against a bully. Correct? Two things: either you run for your life, or you finally face that bully. Regardless, either one you're doing, okay? What do you think is going to happen if you decide to stand up for yourself? Is a bully just going to say, okay, fine? Or what do you think you have to do? You have to fight, correct? You will have to fight that bully. Okay, so regardless if you're going to run for your life or you're going to fight for your life, okay? What do you need? What does your body need to do for you to do that? Okay, so your muscles need to contract. Is that the only thing? What else? Your heart races faster, right? Why? Why do you think your heart needs to race faster? Okay, but therefore you have more blood to all of your organs, right? Why blood? Because blood contains oxygen. Okay, don't you start breathing harder too? Because you need more oxygen. So sympathetic nervous system basically increases all of the internal functions. Increases your heart rate, increases your breathing rate, increases your muscle tone, causes your eyes to dilate. If you're running for your life, do you want to go bump into something? No, you want to be more clear always, right? You want to evade the students, right? They're the police friends. Or if you're going to fight, you want to be able to open your eye better. So sympathetic nervous system dilates your eyes, increases your breathing rate, increases your heart rate. But while you're fighting for your life or you're running, do you think you want to think about using the restroom? Do you want to think about eating? No. So everything so your secretions decrease, your appetite decreases, okay? This is why you don't feel like you have to go use the restroom. When you're going to have a test, and if your friend or somebody says, okay, you go eat a breakfast, what do you say? I don't feel like food, right? You're very jittery, right? Because the first week, or the second week when you came into your first exam, weren't you guys all nervous? Were you able to eat anything? No, because your sympathetic nervous system is being sympathetic to you. You guys have your first exam, okay? So think the thing, okay? Now, so that's sympathetic nervous system. It's your fight or flight. Just think if you're coming into a situation. If you're going to fight the situation or you're going to flee the situation, what does your body need to do? Parasympathetic nervous system and sympathetic nervous system always work in opposites of each other. Okay? Now, what happens? Let's say it's Friday night, okay, and you have a date. You're gonna go to the movie. As soon as you buy your tickets and you enter the theater, what do you do before you actually go sit down in your seat? Get snacks. What else?
Use the restroom.
Use the restroom. Correct. So that is your parasympathetic nervous system. Okay. This is why you feel hungry, because parasympathetic nervous system is your rest and digest branch. This is why when you go watch a movie, you always want to go get a snack, you want to go get a drink. This is why you feel like, okay, let me use the restroom, because you will have to urinate or use the restroom at one point, because it's your parasympathetic that comes into play. What happens once you have settled down and the movie starts? Now, excluding that it's a horror movie or action thing, let's say it's a romantic chick flick. What happens to your heart rate? Okay, besides the guy's falling asleep. But what happens to your heart rate? Relaxes. What happens to your breathing rate? What happens to your muscle tone? Everything just relaxes, right? Guys are able to actually fall asleep in that movie, right? Not girls. You get entertained. Okay? So that's what think of. Sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, parasympathetic, rest and digest. Okay? Now this is an image showing you the brain and the spinal cord is the central nervous system. Everything else is the peripheral nervous system. Okay? This is the motor branch right here. This is the sensory branch. As you can see, the motor branch is divided into autonomic, which is parasympathetic, sympathetic, and somatic. And then this one is into somatic and visceral. Let me tell you more details. Now let's talk about the brain. When you were developing as a fetus, your brain actually started developing in 3 distinct regions. Forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. So when you were a fetus and a group of cells decided to become the brain, or the brain, okay? That brain first developed, that big chunk developed into 3 distinct regions, okay? One is the forebrain, another one is the midbrain, and the third is the hindbrain. And those, so let's say forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain, those further ones started developing in a different line because different structures arise from it. Does that make sense? So what structures make up your forebrain? So A is your cerebrum. Your cerebrum. Now your cerebrum, basically, you have you ever heard of big brain and small brain? Okay, your cerebrum is a big brain. Have you ever heard that some people, your left-sided brain or your right-sided brain is more dominant? So cerebrum has 2 hemispheres. So here's a left hemisphere, here's a right hemisphere, here's a left hemisphere. The 2 hemispheres are together, connected, therefore it's called the cerebrum. And then you have a smaller brain, which is called cerebellum. Okay? So cerebrum is made up of 2 hemispheres. Now this is basically 1 hemisphere. We have taken away the 2nd hemisphere so you can see the structures internally. Okay? So it is the cerebrum, but this is 1 cerebral hemisphere. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. The 2 cerebral hemispheres come together forming the cerebrum. Okay? Now, everything in our brain, if you are right-handed, okay? If you're right-handed, which cerebral hemisphere is more dominant? Left. And if you're left-handed, your right cerebral hemisphere is actually more dominant. Okay, one is dominant than the other. And both of them actually have different functions. If your left hemisphere is more for like mathematics and actual facts, okay, where your right hemisphere is more creative, imaginative. So a person who's left-handed, you will notice that they're better at drawing. They're more imaginative. Okay? Where a person who is right-handed tends to be more factual. They're good at mathematics. They're good at reading, writing, stuff like that. Does that make sense? Okay, or the intellectual stuff. Huh?
What if you're neither?
I mean, these are classic science and classic scenarios. Does that mean everybody falls into them? No. Sometimes what happens is you have a disorder. Okay? I'm right-handed. Does that mean I'm good at math? I suck at math. Okay? But that's what it is. One of my friends, she's left-handed and she's very creative. Like I see her photos. Like when I was in high school, every girl, you pass back notes, right? I mean, her were really creative. Even my sister. See, my sister's right-handed, but she's really creative. Whenever she has to do a project for school, she'll always go a step further, She had to actually make a poster board about some diseases, and she was creative where she actually took the pirate theme and made the poster board, So she's more creative. And she actually got extra credit because it was the best one in the class. I was not her teacher, so you don't need to worry about it. But she was a nursing student, and they had to do, whenever you go a step further, everybody, even me, when I teach physiology, students have to do projects, okay? You have to take a disease, you have to explain the physiology of it and pathophysiology. It's usually in the 9th week, right before your final, that every group has to do that. Now, everybody does have points, but sometimes if your project is a step further and it looks amazing, then basically teachers will give you that extra point. Maybe everybody else got an 8, but they only got, let's say, 95 points. They will give you a little bit more, okay? When I was in my other school, I actually kind of did the same thing for my other students, and one group actually gave me a comic book of that, and I was just like, wow, you know. So students, there are some students who just try to get the work done and get the points. There are others who will go beyond, and of course teachers will realize that, and you will always do better in your classes. Okay, do I still have that comic book? Yeah, I do. You know, I was just like amazed when, and they actually hand drew it, because that person actually drew the comic book. Okay, anyway, coming back. So, your cerebrum is responsible for language, for decision making, for conscious thought. What do I mean conscious thought? What does that mean?
Deciding if something is morally right or wrong.
Yes, morally right or wrong. Okay. Haven't you ever heard the saying that if somebody is drunk, they tend to tell you the truth? Or you could get the truth out from them? Yes or no?
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
Because your cerebrum is.
So basically what happens is a certain part of your cerebrum tends to be suppressed. So when you're doing alcohol, that part of your cerebrum which is responsible for conscious thought is suppressed. Okay? So let's say you hate me. Okay, you become a biatch, I make your life hell. How are you going to say that to me? No. But let's say it's, you know, I don't know, Saturday night and you kind of bump into each other at your house. You had a couple of drinks. You kind of come face to face to me. What do you think you're going to say? You're going to say everything that's, you know, in your mind, right? Because you can't stop yourself. Because a part of your brain that controls that, well, this is appropriate to say, this is not appropriate to say, this is how social behaviors are supposed to be, this is, you know, you tend to monitor that. But alcohol tends to suppress it. Certain drugs do too. Certain cancers do too. Okay? Have you ever seen, who watches Grey's Anatomy? Okay? So, there's one episode, I mean, this is like early seasons on, okay? I don't know if you guys remember, there was one case that this brother, two brothers come in, and they went camping and they got attacked by a bear. You guys remember that episode? And the doctor asks, like, okay, is this the first time? Because what happened is that one of the brothers tried to go grab the cub, and the mother bear kind of got, you know, defensive and attacked. So they were rushed to the ER, and the doctor's like, okay, is this the first time you guys are going camping? He's like, the brother says, no, we've been going ever since we were like 8 years old. So as soon as the doctor heard that, what did she do? She sent the patient for a CT scan of the brain. Why? The CT scan showed that that person actually had brain cancer. Because what happened is you know how to behave, you know what to do. If you've been going to camping from 8 years old, are you going to pick up a bear cub? No. But why is it now that the person did? Because the cancer inhibited that consciousness. Okay? They alter the personality. Depends on where the, hallucinations. Yeah. Certain drugs can do hallucinations, certain viruses, because you could have an infection in your brain, certain microbes. So it depends which part of your brain. But it can hallucinate. Okay. So cerebrum responsible for language, decision making, conscious thought. B is the corpus callosum. Corpus callosum. Corpus callosum is this area right here. Okay? Corpus callosum is that area, and its function, it acts like a bridge between the two hemispheres. So how is the right and the left brain able to talk to each other? Via corpus callosum. Okay? If that connection is severed, basically, then the two cannot communicate with each other. Now C, as you can see, it's pointing to three different structures. It's pointing to a structure which is right here. It's pointing to a structure which is right here, and it's also pointing to a structure which is right there. Okay, there are three different structures. Collectively, it's called the diencephalon. Diencephalon. I think I spelled it wrong. Okay. Diencephalon. you have your book or internet to figure out the proper spelling. Now, diencephalon is split up into 3 different structures. The one that is the information center is called a thalamus.